are going to discuss about the factors affecting growth. Growth, although generally understood and studied in the limited biological sense, can be taken as an important manifestation of the genetic, environmental, and psychological well-being of a person. Hereditary and environmental factors not acting singly but interacting so that genetic factors may predispose on individual or groups to have greater sensitivity to some environmental factors that may not affect other children in the same manner. Therefore, basically there are two factors affecting the growth of an individual. One is hereditary factors and another is environmental factors. Growth depending on hereditary factors is indicated by the differences found in the amount and or rate of growth between children and adults of different national or geographic background living in the same or very similar environments. The genetical control of body shape is much more rigorous than that of the size. Many scholars have reported ethnic variation in growth patterns. Twin studies provide the most reliable evidence of hereditary control over growth. It has been found that the difference between monozygotic twins in respect of stature is relatively less than that of dizygotic twins. Again, age at attaining puberty is more or less the same in monozygotic twins, while a marked difference is observed between dizygotic twin sisters. Hereditary factors are clearly of immense importance as the basis plan of growth is laid down by heredity. Hormones or secretions of the endocrine glands are of great importance in the control of growth and development. The most important hormones that controls growth from birth to maturity is somatotropin of growth hormone. Other important hormones that play a major role in regulating growth and development are thyroid hormone and steroid hormone. Ashcroft and Lovell and Ashcroft et al. Found Chinese children from 4 to 17 years old significantly shorter and lighter than the children and youth of European, African, Afro-European background living in Kingston and Jamaica. All the children were from upper middle to upper socioeconomic status. This suggests a hereditary difference between them. Stern et al. Proposed that genetic factors contributed to the difference in height between the Mexican Americans and white American, European ancestry adults living three northern California communities. With each communities, the former were significantly shorter than the latter. Generally, it is assumed that the body proportion differences between geographic populations are explainable only in terms of a genetic model, which was found by Krogman, Hamill et al., Inilit and Tanner. Many studies showed that familial correlation has been used to examine the hereditary component of variation in many body measurements. Rona and Sin studied the boys and girls of Afro-Caribbean Indian, Pakistani, and European background aged 5 to 11 years living in low socioeconomic status communities in England. They found the Afro-Caribbean children to be on average 3.5 centimeters taller than the national sample of the British children measured in 1982. The Indian, Pakistani and European children were on an average about 2.5 centimeters shorter than the national sample. The population differences in height for lower socioeconomic status children in England parallel values for the average heights of Africans, Europeans and Asians living on their native continents. This suggests a major hereditary contribution to the pattern of status of stature, difficult to sort out the relative contribution of genes and the environment towards growth. Controlled experimental studies of human development are not possible to conduct legally and morally. But it is possible to conclude that the differences between human groups in the average value for size, body proportion and body composition are due to an interplay between genetic and environmental determinants of growth and development. There are some environmental factors also. Environment is a broad term that includes a large number of interacting variables. It is a complex condition and each condition influences the organism differently at different phases of growth. There are many studies that demonstrate the influence of environmental factors on growth. Bogin in 1991 has divided the environmental factors influencing human growth and development in the following categories: climate, altitude, nutrition, socioeconomic status, migration and urbanization. Kimura in 1984 and Takahashi in 1984 also includes others like family size, psychological disturbance, generation changes. Now we are going to give stretch on climate. Heat, cold and relative humidity are associated with variation in body size, proportion and composition. People living in different climatic conditions tend to show differences in their body size. There is a close correlation between the linearity of peoples as judged by their weight unit height as adults and the average annual temperature of the area where they live or from which they migrated in historical times. Roberts found a significant negative correlation between body weight and mean annual temperature for a worldwide sample of populations. He also noted that the ratio of sitting height to total height decreases as temperature increased. Buffon published the first data suggesting the existence of seasonal variation in growth rates of healthy children. Studying the growth records of the son of Count Mountbelliard, Buffon noted that most of the boys' height increase during the year took place in the summer months. Now we are going to altitude. The thin air at high altitude creates environmental stretch among the people living there. The prevailing conditions at high altitude have an impact on the growth and maturation of children. Growth and skeletal maturations are more retarded in mountain dwellers than in coastal dwellers because of environmental stretch. Now we are coming to nutrition. Of all the environmental factors affecting growth, nutrition seems to be the most important. Nutrition influences both growth and development during prenatal as well as postnatal phases. A required amount of food and nutrition is essential at different ages for proper growth and development. Environmental stretch, particularly nutritional deficiencies and associated infections, reduces childhood growth rates and delays maturations. Preschool children are more sensitive to environmental insults than school children. The quantities of nutrients and their proportions within the diet interact with other variables such as physical activity and health status to regulate to a significant extent the rate of growth. The nutritional assessment of a community to Zalev in 1966 is to map out the magnitude and geographic distribution of malnutrition as a public health problem to discover and analyze the ecological factors that are directly or indirectly responsible and guiding action intended to improve nutrition and health. Malnutrition is the main nutrition problem. Nutritional problem arises if there is any deficiency in the intake of essential constituents of a balanced diet. Malnutrition has been defined as a pathological state resulting from a relative or absolute deficiency or excess of one or more essential nutrients. It comprises the following four norms. Undernutrition. In this condition, the results from the intake of the insufficient quantity of food over an extended time period. Overnutrition. This condition results from the consumption of excessive quantity of food over an extended period of time. Imbalance. It is the pathological state which results from a disproportion among essential nutrients with or without the absolute deficiency of any nutrient. In the last forms is specific deficiency. It is the pathological state resulting from a relative or absolute lack of an individual nutrient. Malnutrition is the direct result of an adequate or unbalanced diet. Assessment of protein calorie malnutrition could be done in a community by three direct methods. One is clinical science, other is biochemical test, and third one is anthropometry. In fact, retardation of growth rate is an indication of malnutrition, and the condition is improved by supplementing the diet. During the post-war period, various investigations were made in different parts of the world to assess the effect of supplementation of nutritious food to undernourished children. Studies revealed that proper food supply helped restore normal growth in children who might otherwise have suffered. Worldwide observations have established the fact that inadequate diet and malnutrition may produce stated growth of body and mind. But if adverse conditions prevail only for a short period, children can regain normal growth. Migration has been taking place from rural to urban areas. This has been mainly due to the search for livelihood or employment occurring more rapidly today than ever before. Migration redistributes the genetic, physiological, morphological, and sociocultural differences found in human populations. Thus, it is likely that migration would have some effects on the growth and development of migrants and the recipient populations. Of the effects of migration on growth, apart from the classic studies of Sapphire on the growth of Japanese children in Japan and Hawaii, and of Goldstein and Lasker on the growth of Mexicans in Mexico and United States, many other studies since then have confirmed the plasticity of human development. Studies of Glanit, Ria, Ramirez and Muller and Clark show the effects of modernization and migration on pattern of growth. Kalpan found that growth differences between migrants and cedents was too soon after migration, and this was due to environmental change. Migrants were found taller than rural and urban cedents. They also had better health and were of generally high socioeconomic status than the cedents. Massey Taylor reviewed geographic and social mobility in England and found that the effect of selection were additive. Migrants tended to be taller in any geographic area and within any social class. Higher socioeconomic status can, by itself, lead to increased body size and rate of maturation. To make both differences in socioeconomic status confound any unique biological differences between migrants and cedents. Lasker found that age of migration and length of time in the new environment were responsible for growth differences between migrants from Mexico to the United States and Mexican cedents. Bindon and Jansky found that children from Western Samoa were significantly shorter, lighter and lighter for height than their counterparts in American Samoa and Hawaii. The major influence on height and weight appears to be modernization, with migration playing only a small incremental role to them. Rural-urban differences in growth and development of children have also been studied by many. Cole and Corusini found that the differences in growth reflected economic differences. ICMR in 1972, in a nationwide survey of growth, showed that urbanites were slightly larger. Therefore, growth could be affected by one factor or the other, as it is the resultant of many of them interacting with each other, or as per Bogging environment being mediated by other factors is the primary determinants of biological change in growth and development. Socioeconomic status. The effects of socioeconomic status on growth and development have a secondary influence interacting with climate, altitude, nutrition or migration. However, socioeconomic status has an equally important impact on growth. Modern cities have a wider variety of sanitation, health, educational and social services and generally offer a wider variety of foods at lower prices than towns and villages. Urban children whose parents are engaged in wage labor work less of energy intensive labor than rural children whose parents are engaged in agricultural labor. Living in a city and having income beyond that spent on food allow people to avail themselves of these urban services and benefits. Calories saved by better health and reduces child labor plus the availability of more food and more calories used foods are invested into the bigger, faster growing children. It is in this way that small increment in education and occupation which translate into higher income and greater knowledge and use of city service are associated with growth. Higher socioeconomic status allows for better nutrition, better health care, reduces physical labor for children and greater growth, promoting psychological stimulation from parents, schools and peers. The influence of education, occupation, income and having on growth has become evident as well as the specific effect of each measure alone and in combination. With separate measures of socioeconomic status, it is possible to fractionate the influence of education, income and occupation on both growth and size. In India, there is a great socioeconomic diversity which probably affects the growth performance of children belonging to different groups. In Delhi, well-off children are larger than the lower class children but are still somewhat smaller than the Europeans. Similar results of boys and girls of upper middle socioeconomic groups are significantly taller, heavier, with an earlier skeletal and sexual maturity than these of lower middle socioeconomic groups. Mojumdar and Bahadur in 1952, Swaminathan in 1964, Prasad et al. In 1971, Sharma and Cole in 1970, Garg in 1979, Singh et al. In 1987, Rao and Balakrishnan in 1986 and 1990, Sharma in 1991 and Malik and Singh 1991, Bharati and Bosu in 1990 studied the effect of micro-sociocultural factors associated with economic conditions of the Mahishya caste population of West Bengal. They found an increase in the anthropometrics measurement with improvement in economic conditions in both the sexes. Therefore, socioeconomic and sociocultural factors which form a part of the micro-environmental surroundings of the people sometimes affect the individual directly and others exert their influence through intermediate mechanism, that is nutrition. So we can say that the heredity and environment is the most essential factors regarding the growth pattern. And in anthropology, we can done it through the measurement of the body. So the factors affecting growth is mainly heredity and environment.